Welcome back, everybody, to the Great Compromise podcast. As always, I'm GOP Jim, and with me is Victoria the Democrat. How you doing, Victoria?
I'm doing well, thanks. I'm ready to get into it today.
Awesome. So let's get into it. Our topic today: should recreational marijuana be legalized in the United States? To be clear, both Victoria and myself support legal medical marijuana. It has good uses and will continue to help people as it's studied more. Today we will be purely discussing recreational use. This is an interesting discussion as it has already been legalized in 18 states. But before we start, let's go over the format. Victoria's on the pro side, so she's going to start. I'm on the con side, I'll follow her, and then we'll head into the open debate. So take it away, Victoria.
This week, I'm on the side of legalizing marijuana at the federal level. Marijuana has a history coded in misinformation and propaganda. Criminalization of marijuana was born out of a desire to criminalize minorities. Harry J. Anslinger was the head of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics from 1930 to 1962. He used his position to incite fear in Americans regarding drugs and focused on marijuana. Anslinger used openly racist rhetoric. He tried to link marijuana to jazz in the public mind, therefore linking it to African Americans. At one point, joints were called jazz cigarettes. In an article that Anslinger co-authored, he said, quote, "Weed makes darkies think they are as good as white people," end quote. Yeah, that's icky. This article also claimed marijuana was the assassin of youth, that it was the cause of insanity, criminality, and death. Just slightly dramatic. He tried to make it the most violent drug in the history of mankind in the American eyes. Anslinger buried scientific research that counteracted his claims. He helped to create the three important tenets which are associated with the war on drugs: harsh penalties, compound penalties for repeat offenders, and mandatory minimum sentencing. His influence as part of the United Nations Narcotics Commission helped influence government officials to make a law in 1970 that made marijuana a Class 1 controlled substance, putting it in league with heroin. To this day, black and white people use marijuana at about the same rate, but black people are nearly 4 times as likely to be arrested today, whereas white people are more likely to make a profit from it. Secondly, federal legalization means more safety and regulation. People buying weed off the street have no way of knowing how clean their weed is. It could be covered in mold, fungus, or pesticides. Once legalized, the government enforces testing and regulation so it's free of toxic substances. 5 states, including Colorado, Washington, Oregon, and Alaska, have all regulated their packaging so that it's child-resistant as an additional safety measure. It also allows for age restrictions to be enforced in the whole supply chain, including growers, distributors, and buyers. The serving size and strength of weed is also regulated. These imposed restrictions would improve the health and safety of the weed industry for both the growers and the customers. Lastly, in states where marijuana can be legally sold, the taxes go to provide funding to police, mental health centers, housing programs, drug treatment programs, and public school grants. In Colorado, $40 million in marijuana tax revenue went to public school construction, and $105 million went to housing programs, mental health programs in jails, and health programs in middle schools during the years 2016 and 2017. The impact has been great, with some counties stating that they have been able to improve their infrastructure so dramatically that it took 1 year to do 20 years of work. This is a statement from Vincent Cederberg, LLC, which is a law firm specializing in the marijuana industry.
Thank you, Victoria. Now, I am against legalizing recreational marijuana. For starters, it's harmful to your health. According to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, marijuana can be harmful to your health. Smoking it has been linked to lower birth weight if smoked while pregnant, cannabis use disorder, an increased risk of injury among older adults, a higher risk of developing schizophrenia or severe mental illnesses, orthostatic hypotension, which is head rush or dizziness on standing up, And the FDA has warned the public not to use vaping products that contain THC, since products of this type have been implicated in many of the reported cases of serious lung injuries. Not to mention the effects it has on children and teenagers. The percentage of 12 to 17-year-olds using marijuana is higher in every legal marijuana state than the national average. For example, 16.21% of Colorado teens and 18.86% of teens in Alaska reported marijuana use in the past year, compared to an average of 12.29% for the United States overall in 2015 to 2016. Colorado teen marijuana use jumped 20% in the 2-year average after marijuana was legalized for adults. Marijuana is especially dangerous for young people because human brains are not fully developed until around age 25. The American Academy of Pediatrics said that adverse effects of teen marijuana use include impaired short-term memory and decreased concentration, attention span, and problem solving, which clearly interfere with learning. Alterations in motor control, coordination, judgment, reaction time, and tracking ability have also been documented. These may contribute to unintentional deaths and injuries. We can't allow this drug to be legal for the health and safety of this country. Now, believe it or not, but marijuana is addictive. Marijuana use can lead to the development of marijuana use disorder, which can take the form of addiction. Recent data suggests that 30% of those who use marijuana may have some degree of marijuana use disorder. People who use marijuana before the age of 18 are 4 to 7 times more likely to develop a marijuana use disorder than adults. And remember, teens are more likely to use it when it's legal. According to the National Institute of Drug Abuse, marijuana use disorders are often associated with dependence, in which a person feels withdrawal symptoms when not taking the drug. Heavy users who stop using marijuana may suffer withdrawal symptoms such as insomnia, depression, anxiety, nausea, chills, and stomach pain. A study in the Journal of Drug Issues found that the number of U.S. daily marijuana users has risen dramatically since 2002, and now 68% of users report daily or near daily use. Marijuana addiction is real and will only get worse if it's legalized. Also, marijuana is an impairing drug and should not be used before or while driving. Marijuana-related traffic deaths rose 62% following the legalization of marijuana in Colorado. The AAA Foundation for Traffic Safety reported that fatal crashes involving marijuana doubled after legalization in Washington. Why are we allowing this drug to be legal when it's actually ending lives?
Thank you for your points, Jim. Unusually, I'm actually going to start out with an agreement. I think that
Wow.
children should not be using marijuana. Teenagers should not be smoking it. It is harmful, especially when you start under 25 to be smoking marijuana. Especially there are some implications if you already have schizophrenia in your family line.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not arguing that the legal age of being able to buy marijuana should be lowered. I think that by legalizing recreational marijuana, we can more easily control who is buying it and be cutting out drug cartels that people would be buying from the black market where it's not regulated.
I see what you're saying, and thank you for agreeing with me.
Don't get used to it.
That's an amazing moment. But the facts show that in states that has been legalized, teen use has gone up. So inadvertently or not, it is affecting. It's kind of the same argument for why people don't want to lower the smoking of cigarette age to 18 because they think it would be easier to get into high schools. So, yeah, 25 is better. Well, it's 21 actually in Colorado. Mm-hmm. They don't recommend you start smoking until you're 25, which is interesting. But the legal age is 21, and it is still, teen use is still going up.
Well, right now, legalizing marijuana is still a new thing. It's exciting that there's all these THC products, and you can get it with a medical marijuana card, if not just by going in and buying recreationally. Mm-hmm. So I think right now it's still uniquely appealing to get in on it at this level. But if we jump like a couple decades into the future, it's not going to be at all interesting because it's been legalized for so long. So if we look at like countries in Europe where the drinking age is super low and it's just normal for kids to have wine at the table with their parents, they don't get like super excited and like go overboard once it's legal for them to drink like American students do. You know, like you've got so many kids partying once they can finally go to bars because it's like they've been waiting so long for this. But when it's always available to you, it's not nearly as interesting.
Well, I think that argument doesn't really work because in America, alcohol is 21 and kids go crazy for it, and marijuana is 21, so they're still going to do it underage. They're still going to go crazy for it. If we made it legal to any age or whatever age it is to drink in Europe, yeah, the stigma would go away and the taboo would go away and they wouldn't do it as much, but then it would be available to teenagers, and that's when it's damaging. Did you see what I'm saying?
I do, but the point I'm making is that it's new right now, so I can see how...
Well, alcohol has been around a long time, and kids are always excited about that.
Fair point.
Yeah.
Fair point. But I think that the less stigma there is around things, the less interesting they are. And by continuing to make weed illegal in some states, that's definitely not going to help younger kids not want to experiment or try it or use that as a way to rebel in their youth.
Okay, yeah, no, I can see why taking that taboo away would make it less tempting to try it. Okay, you know what? I agree with that point.
Thanks.
Yeah, take it easy. Earlier you talked about the tax money.
Yes.
I just had one point about that. I saw online that money raised from legal marijuana taxes generally accounts for less than 1% of a state's tax revenue. At this point, it's a drop in the bucket for tax income. I know you said that was a fair amount of money to help schools, and it's same way how we use the lottery in New Hampshire. A portion of that money goes to education here. If it has to be legal, that's where I'd want the money to go. But I think ultimately it's a drop in the bucket. And if we say, okay, that's not enough tax revenue, we increase the prices more, then it is going to invite that black market back again, who can easily undercut the legal stuff. And then we have the same problem we have now. Everyone's just going to get the cheaper weed from the individual dealers instead of the legal stuff.
Actually, since marijuana has been made legal in so many states in the West Coast, Border Patrol has reported a huge drop in marijuana seizures across the border, that the demand for smuggling it across the Mexican border has dropped so much that drug cartels are losing a ton of money. So I don't think it's as competitive a market as you're claiming.
No. I'm glad to hear that, actually. If we can cut off the cartel, that would be great. But I mean, right now the tax revenue is not that much coming from marijuana. What I'm saying is, if we decide one day it's not that much, and we increase it too much, that will invite the cartels back because they can sell it cheaper than the legal stuff is. Do you see what I'm saying?
I do see what you're saying.
Okay.
That seems like a future problem and not a current argument.
It's something we have to potentially worry about.
Something to think about.
Okay.
All right, well, how about this? Arresting people for marijuana possession costs the U.S. between $1.19 billion and $6 billion every year, and incarcerating marijuana offenders costs the U.S. an estimated $600 million every year. So by legalizing marijuana, our government would be saving a ton of money on incarceration and arrests.
Yeah, that's a lot of money. I mean, in general, this country spends a lot of money incarcerating people. This is some rare middle ground. I think this is something we could decriminalize. I don't like the idea of fully legalizing it because of, I mean, it's a health hazard, really. I mean, all the things I listed off earlier, it's not good for you. It's particularly not good for teenagers and children. So I don't really want it to be fully legal, but decriminalizing it will obviously help with costs, help with the racism problem you brought up earlier, which I sadly is true, unfortunately. So I think we decriminalize it, not legalize it, and I think that is the answer here.
I think that could be a strong contender for an option, but alcohol is definitely not good for you.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no laws against it, except for maybe a few counties.
Just like a few places in Utah.
Those are specifically the ones I have in mind, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, those Mormons.
So whether something is legal or illegal, we can't stop people from doing what is bad for their health.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, we tried prohibition with alcohol. I think alcohol specifically is like too entrenched in human society at this point. It's been around forever, and it will be around forever. Like, we can't get rid. We would have more luck getting rid of cigarettes than we would alcohol, and it would be very difficult to get rid of cigarettes. Mm-hmm. But I don't think. I mean, marijuana's been around a long time, but it hasn't been around as long as alcohol. And so I would argue not making it legal now would save us trouble down the road if we can help it.
I don't think that's true. I mean, so many different parts of our history include marijuana. It's not like it's a new thing. Nixon was definitely like vilifying marijuana because of all like the hippies, and he was trying to make it something to be like ashamed of, not just criminal, but like as a political tactic.
Yeah.
So plenty of people were using it when it was purely illegal. I think that legalizing it helps us make it safer, more regulated, with less sketchiness on like the entire production of it. Like, you don't want children picking your weed or, having all this labor trafficking because it's something that you don't need your paperwork if you're an illegal immigrant to help grow. I think legalizing it is just going to make it safer and just less sketchy in all counts.
Well, it doesn't make it completely safe. Even the safest, most well-regulated pot is still going to be dangerous, and it's still going to cause DUIs and accidents and still be terrible for teenagers. And
my argument isn't that smoking is a safe activity and
yeah.
everyone should do it. I'm saying that it's better if we legalize it.
Maybe.
Is that a yes? Did I just win?
No.
Are we sure? It sounded like you're agreeing with me.
No, of course there's no winners here.
Fine.
I think it's an interesting point. I'm not entirely sure that making it regulated will make it safe enough for me to be comfortable with it being legal. Honestly, I think it's an addictive substance. It's dangerous. Even at its safest point, it's still not safe. You know what I mean?
I do, and I definitely am not arguing, like I said, that it's approved for everyone to use and that everyone can use it responsibly, or that it's going to be good for your lungs at all. But I do think that it's wreaked enough havoc in society being so highly criminalized. The war on drugs was such a racialized problem, with people going to jail for life because it was like their third time being caught with like a small amount of weed. So it's like the The recidivism rates are higher because people can get in trouble and be sent back to jail for selling weed. There are way too many people in jail just because of marijuana-related offenses that don't equal, like the punishment does not equal the crime.
Yeah, for the most part, I would say that's true, and that's why I would go with decriminalization of weed. I think that's the better option here. I don't. Doesn't sound like you would agree with that, but it is somewhat common ground that we don't often have in these discussions. So, look, we found some middle ground. Isn't that nice?
I'll take a compromise. That's kind of the goal here.
Perfect.
Thank you for listening to the Great Compromise podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please like us on Facebook and Twitter and share it with your friends. And we'll see you next week.